So why do people fail? Well, they're pitching the wrong investors. You're not trying to convince people. It's a search for believers.
Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence Podcast. It is a pleasure to have Nathan Beckard here with me today. He's the founder and CEO of Founder Suite and Funding Stack. I was getting those wrong beforehand because they kind of are a mouthful on that front. And he has helped, I don't know how many hundreds of startups raise money, LPs raise money. I think it's many billions of dollars have been raised on your platforms. You've been doing this for a pretty good amount of time. So you've seen a ton of different startups and what makes for startup success, startup failure, at least when it comes to fundraising, and hopefully to company building overall, which is why I thought it'd be fascinating to have a chat with you because you probably have some of the largest databases around what makes for the qualities of a company that is likely to raise funding and make it to the next round. So Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So maybe give a quick just overview so I don't bungle it any further of what is Founder Suite and Funding Stack, their differences, but also similarities in some of the key stats that people should know as we get further into the conversation.
Absolutely. So Founder Suite's our OG platform. We launched it in 2016, so we're almost 10 years old.
Congrats.
And it's a platform for raising capital for startups. So it's a bunch of different things. We've been expanding it over the years. It's a database of 210,000 investors paired up with a get intro tool that looks at your social graph and finds ways to get warm intros to all those investors. It's also an investor CRM. We kind of invented, I like to say we invented the category of investor CRM. There's other competitors out there now, but we sort of invented that. And then other things like pitch deck hosting, investor updates, email tools, virtual data room, documents. So it's a pretty, end-to-end suite of tools for startups raising capital. We've had 100,000 startups on it, probably even more. I haven't run the rake in a while, but 100,000 startups raised over 21 billion. And then about 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago, we started to get some VCs and fundraising consultants, investment bankers using Founder Suite, usually pulled in by their clients like startups or portfolio companies, but they wanted a way to run multiple deals on one platform. So we kind of spun out an enterprise version, if you want to call it, called Funding Stack, which is used for two main use cases, either for VCs raising their fund or for VCs and investment bankers, fundraising consultants, helping multiple companies raise capital. And it lets you set up sub accounts and stuff like that. So Founder Suite for startups, Funding Stack for VCs and advisors. And it's been a lot of fun.
I assume in some ways those two help each other in the sense that like if you're a VC raising on your platform, you also help it feeds better data into the platform for Founder Suite for founders to figure out who to raise from maybe and sort of it can use similar technology, right? I think they both leverage it. When I was looking at the websites look sort of similar and the product looks a little bit similar, but I'm sure there's differences under the hood.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of differences on the hood, even though they are similar and share, kind of common DNA. They sort of started the same and they're diverging over time, a lot more bells and whistles and really features to run like multiple deals on Funding Stack. But they are separate platforms. So there's not, a bridge between them. Like people always ask, oh, if I sign up for Founder Suite, will your VCs on Funding Stack discover me? Well, no, that's not how it works, at least at the moment. But yeah, there's, people leaving reviews on investors, feedback on investors that gets fed into, common database, stuff like that. So there's some intertwining.
And out of curiosity, quickly, I mean, you said, 100,000 startups have raised in the platform. It's been about 10 years since you've been doing it. So is that you're doing like 10,000 new startups are trying to raise on your platform every year, approximately on average?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I mean, if I put it on a graph, it would definitely kind of start small and get larger as years.
That's a fair point. It grew over time. It's not out over 10 years perfectly.
But it's several thousand a month are using it, right? And they're not all successful. I shouldn't say, I don't want to be misleading that 100,000 have successfully raised. We've had 100,000 sign up for the platform, use the platform. A portion of those are the ones that raised the 21 billion.
what percent, this is more stats, I'm sure there's some stats out there publicly that we could pull too, but like what percentage of companies that try to raise actually end up raising? Is it, or at least on your platform, is it 50%? Is it 10%? What percent actually end up raising funds?
Yeah, it's actually pretty. It can be a little depressing because I've seen single digit stats like
Really?
5 to 10% of folks who go out to raise venture capital are successful at it. Now we don't actually kind of track this all the way on our platform because we're not, people say, what's your success ratio? Well, that doesn't really apply because we're not a crowdfunding platform. It's very binary, right? You come on, you post your project, you either get funded or not. And some of that's under the control of the platform, some of it's under the control of the founder. For us, we're providing the tools. So you're coming on as a startup, you're finding investors, you're reaching out to them, you're connecting with them, you're pitching, sending out your pitch decks, stuff like that. But we don't have an ultimate outcome in your success, right? It's a function, whether or not you're going to be successful is a function of like, how fundable is your business? How well did you target the right investors? How good are you at pitching and following up and creating momentum? So we don't, I shy away from like what percent of your customers are successful because most of it's outside of control. However, I would say because we've structured this away around how fundraising works in the real world, and I feel like we've optimized every step in terms of finding the investors, getting those warm intros, following up, building momentum for your round. I think we can very confidently say we've increased your odds quite a bit if you're using our platform.
You're right. No doubt. That's like why someone should go on the platform and help with that. But it's a fair point. There are a lot of other steps in the process to be a success. So I want to ask a lot more questions about that and really dig into kind of that piece. But trying to kick it off, the question I'd like to ask everybody, which certainly relates to your ability to raise to some extent, is how do you define entrepreneurial excellence? Like, what does that actually mean, right? You've seen all these startups. You founded at least two, right? At least these two companies, but I forget how many companies have you founded overall?
Half a dozen, but some are consulting businesses, some are proper startups, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Still half a dozen. So you've founded 6 companies. What does excellence in being an entrepreneur mean and look like to you?
It's such a great question, right? But it's so hard to answer.
Yeah.
I know it's beautiful. It's okay. Hopefully this doesn't sound weird, but it's a little bit like porn. How do you define porn? Well, you just sort of know it when you see it, right? Like, yeah, you can define what it means, naked people, etc. But I kind of feel like that same answer applies to entrepreneurial success too, right? I meet founders and I can kind of just from, I guess, pattern recognition, kind of tell this guy or this gal has got it. They have that sort of burning fire in their eyes, that they're going to bust through walls and make this happen. Plus they have a good idea. Plus they have a pretty big market, right? I meet other founders. I do get on like pitch deck practice calls with some of our subscribers and stuff every now and then. And other ones are like, I can tell this guy is going to give up when it gets bumpy. It just doesn't have that same sort of drive, almost obsession, compulsion, right? That I think you kind of have to have to be successful. So, and I know that's kind of a weird answer, but I think it's that sort of obsession about solving some big issue, big problem is the definition to me.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, actually, that's how doing about 80 episodes now of this, the definition I come through, or the single thing that shines through, is a level of obsession with what you're doing. But how do you
crazy? You got to be crazy to do this.
You do. But with a big but, right? In kind of going why I was asking about the number of people who have successfully raised, at least on your platforms, is every person who is attempting to raise believes they should be able to raise venture dollars, which, to be clear, is far and away not the critical element to a successful business. You can build lots of successful businesses without VC. And frankly, the large majority of successful entrepreneurs out there don't have venture dollars whatsoever. They're more standard real business, in a sense, quote unquote, real businesses, of which I've had some of them on my on this podcast, and I hope to have many more, because in some ways those are just as interesting, if not more so. But when it comes to fundraising, the people you see, every one of those founders who gets on your platform thinks they deserve venture dollars and think they're the type of founder who has the drive, obsession, knowledge, superpower that makes them fundable, and yet they don't. Why? What is missing? Is it just they've deluded themselves into believing that they're obsessed, or something else?
There is definitely a warping of expectations and attitudes. I think because, we're all reading TechCrunch and seeing all these startups get funded, huge numbers. Think about some of the AI startups that have raised capital, massive numbers with like no product, right? So it kind of skews the perception. And you see big stats about how much venture capital, dry powder is out there sloshing around. And so I think founders think, oh, I'm better than average. I might not be the top 1%, but I'm far above 50%. I'm far better than average. I should be able to raise capital. And then they get out there and start pitching, and they realize, this is way harder than it looks, right? Investors are, there's a lot of investors out there. There's a lot of capital out there, but they're smart people. They're really choosy. They have a lot of options what they can put their money into. And, one thing this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but one thing I always say on our webinars and podcasts and stuff like that, I've said this 1,000 times. Like when I was raising capital, I pitched 200 investors, ended up with our seed round, ended up with one VC and 10 angels. So 5% conversion rate. I also got rejected 95% of the time. And keep in mind, I had been raising capital for years, right? And I'm still getting rejected 95% of the time. And I think that's equal or higher for other founders too. And so, it's actually just exponentially harder than it looks to go raise money. And if any part of your overall pitch is like kind of weak, you don't have any traction, you don't really have a relevant background, your market is interesting, but it's either too crowded or just too small at present, those are reasons for investors to say no. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually pretty easy. And you've invested in a lot of companies. I'd almost ask you this question. You've invested in a lot of companies. Like, you're kind of looking for reasons to say no, right? And so unless you're like the perfect Cinderella startup with super awesome background, super amazing traction, super big market, great team, it's super hard.
I totally agree. It is super hard. At the same time, I do think I do wonder sometimes when people have the story of like, hey, like I pitched 200 people and I only got X number of investments. Like, I know that is the case for a lot of founders. At the same time, I see a lot of founders who also pitch 5 people and get five term sheets. And so I wonder with a lot of folks what they're missing, or at least my advice, and I don't know if this is what you see with folks too, like there's so much content and knowledge out there for people to get good at fundraising, right? Like this podcast is one example, right? This will be a piece of content for people to think through, what can I do right? And yet my point, I guess, is I don't find a lot of the founders, the best founders go really deep on whatever the most important situation or issue is at the moment. So what I've told like one of the companies that's a portfolio company of mine, reached out and said, hey, like we're about to start doing our next round of fundraising. I'd like to review things with you, what your thoughts are, when we should raise, et cetera, et cetera. He already had his list of top 200 investors he wanted to go talk to, fully ranked and ordered, already had that done. He had some really good questions about it, wanted to do pitch practice, also great. And he had a lot of the stats already. So I think he's going to raise really quickly. But what shocks me, and the one thing I did tell him, I was like, look, he's like, well, I need to keep my other co-founder running the business over here and my other one focusing on the product over here. And I'm just going to go do it. I was like, look, no. You need to just assume if you're going to go fundraise, this is your number one job right now. And you need to go all in on that. And he was himself individually doing that, but he needed to pull in the rest of his team, in my mind, to go do that the right way. Whereas a lot of founders, I think that fundraising is one of 3 priorities they might have on a given week or day. Mm-hmm. And instead it's like, you know what? That is the only thing you need to do. Like, your pitch should be freaking amazing. Like perfect, down to the point, you know exactly what role. Like, this is the advice I give people. You need to know exactly what role you and your co-founder or co-founders are playing in a pitch meeting. It is a show. It is an act. You need to go in and know what it is. So I give you an example there. One of the companies I raised for when I was at one of my previous companies, my co-founder was this brilliant technical mind. He was also CEO. So he could have given the whole pitch, but it wasn't really his thing. Number one, he wasn't great at it. He was okay. He was this hardcore engineer. I was better at that stuff. Uh, but I wasn't CEO. And luckily he was cool with saying like, we'll play these roles. And so basically my role is like, I'm going to give the pitch and like everyone sort of discounts me. Like I'm the sort of business guy, whatever. I'm going to do the, play that role and give the high level pitch and the key things. And then he was going to get up and be this mad professor, but he was a professor at a top university for a little while. And so he just got up on the board and started writing algorithms on a whiteboard. VCs had no idea what he was writing. I literally told him, like, you can write whatever the heck you want. They will have no idea what you're really writing up there. Just explain it as if you were a professor and they were students and they don't actually understand you, and play that crazy founder who's just so freaking smart. All you want to focus on is this crazy algorithm and how we're going to build this out and make this great new thing. That was the role he played. And it was hard. He wasn't always cool with it, but because he could do lots of other things too, but that was the role. And that led to us being able to raise much faster than otherwise, I believe. So I'll pause there. I just kind of went on a big tangent, but like, people just need to focus and do fundraising right if you expect to have success.
Let's take that scenario though. The reason that probably was a success is you were there as this sort of yin to his yang. Now, if you had put him in the room without just him, wild, crazy scientist guy writing algorithms, he probably wouldn't have raised money, right? You sort of balanced out his wild visionary. And I know this because before launching Founder Suite, I had a consulting business where I was fractional CFO, and I would go in, I called it wingman to CEOs, right? Where I would be the business guy, the finance guy, the numbers guy, the biz dev guy. So same exact role. I was playing your role, and it would let those founders be the wild, crazy visionary, the wild, bold thing, because it was balanced by this numbers guy who could kind of bring them in and keep them on track. Right. So yeah, that's a great combo. Yeah.
So why do founders fail with this? So why does so many, on your platform, you say 5% or something actually end up raising on your platform? Probably it's even lower maybe in the real world because you guys give them a bit of a boost. Why do they get this part wrong? Or what are they doing wrong when they are improperly raising, which then of course impacts their ability to be an excellent entrepreneur? Because you can't build at least a VC-backed business. You can still build great businesses. You can't build a VC-backed business if you are unable to raise venture dollars. Like you can't pass go. Yeah, if you're trying to build a VC-backed business and you are unable to raise VC.
Yeah, it's a laundry list of reasons, but I will go just through the top several of them or top few of them. Probably, one of the top things I see is they don't spend enough time really digging in, researching, qualifying investors. You gave an example of, some of the people who have raised really fast. A lot of those people actually spent a long time. And let me back up. We have a podcast, How I Raised It, interview founders who raise capital. We've done 300. And you could almost phrase this question as what are commonalities of people who raise really fast? Well, they spent years getting to know investors. Maybe they worked at a startup as, early team, but not a founder or anything like that. They got to know a lot of investors. They built those relationships. And that's why it went fast. So when it was their turn to be the CEO of a ship, they already, investors knew them and stuff like that. They were known quantity. Okay. Push that aside for a sec. So why do people fail? Well, they're pitching the wrong investors, right? One of the beautiful things that I gleaned from one of our interviewees was you're not trying to convince people. It's a search for believers. You're not trying to flip you around and convince you of how fundable and awesome my startup is. It's really just a search for believers. So you got to spend in the time to research, kind of qualify investors, and then reach out and connect with ones that are looking for your type of deal. And that sounds simple. It's not. A lot of founders make that mistake of just sort of going after the wrong investors. Number two is probably the pitch, right? I told you, I get on these pitch review sessions with folks. I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. I can't even, they're paying me. They're a customer of mine. And I'm having a hard time sitting through a 30-minute pitch practice with them because it's boring. It doesn't have an emotional connection. It doesn't have a logical connection. It doesn't have a story arc. It's too cluttered, too much text. It can go on and on about why pitches are bad. But like you said, you've got to nail your pitch. You've got to have gone through the practice rounds with other founders and friends and friendly investors, dozen or more times, so that when you actually sit in front of, I'm pitching Adam Spector, my pitch is crushing it, right? Adam does my type of deal. He's looking for my stage, my sector, my industry, and my pitch is awesome. And then kind of what you alluded to a few minutes ago of like, hey, fundraising is a FOMO driven thing. You've got to create that FOMO. You've got to create that urgency because investors will just drag their feet if you let them. And so if you can't go in hard and full time on this is another pattern I've seen from our interviewees on our podcast. They were giving some of their duties to their co-founder, or I even know a couple that would hire a COO or, hire a firm like yours so they could just go all in on fundraising and really get that momentum going for it. So there's a few, I could go on and on, but we'll stop there.
I have a question about almost each one or these comments. But instantly want to come back to the kind of momentum, and that'll be a good way to lead into some other stuff and urgency, momentum, and focus. But going through like the red investor, just like the quick comment on the red investor piece, it is shocking me nonstop how many founders be like, oh, I want to go like raise from, Sequoia, Excel, Andreessen, and they don't really care. They're just like, I'm going to pick the big names that I've heard of and read about. And I'm like, why? Like, those are great firms, but why are those people right for you? And then they come back to me like, oh, they don't get what I'm doing and building. I'm like, yeah, because like, why would they? That's not a focus area for them. They're not specialists. And you, as you said, you want to find the believers. I really like that point. But you should be able to find the believers. Like, most of these VCs want to find deals they're looking for. So they will put the information out there of like, I'm looking for these sorts of deals. I care about this sort of stuff. We're not fundraising at Shore, but like, I know there are VCs out there who are looking for deals that look like us. Like, they actually, some of them reach out to us, in fact. But I know they're out there. And so if I did fundraise, I would go back to those folks and make, you get what we're doing and why. I want you to help us make this a reality. And they would. And so totally agree on that front. But one thing, like, people just do your research. Like, this is where it just pisses me off. It's like lazy fundraising. You're like, well, I'm just like this smart dude or gal. He's just said, like, I'm gonna get people to put money into me. Like, no, like, people have to understand you. Yes, it is a small group of people who are smart enough or brave enough or wealthy enough or whatever it is to go start a startup in the first place. However, that doesn't mean you are in the top 1% of that group just because you are part of that group. And so you have to be in that sort of one. So sorry, go through your point. Good deck.
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously chatted first on the conference we were on a few weeks ago. And I was flattered that one of the audience members gave me credit for my deck, my explanation that I had for the group, being really good. He's like, this is a really good looking deck. And he made the point to everybody that this is really good. And I was flattered that he used my deck that I made for this conference as an example. But it's shocking me how many founders have these terrible decks. And like, there's no excuse with AI nowadays to have a bad deck. Like, my deck was not great. I think I spent 30 minutes doing it. AI did 50% of the work. I had to clean it up a bunch. And that was it. And it was not one of my best ones, in my opinion, but I think it was still stronger than the large majority of people's, because there are just some key elements you put in to do this the right way. And founders, like, your deck should be on point. Like, if you are unable to explain concisely with a good story, set a story arc, what you're doing and why, and you do that upfront and not have it be something you have to read in depth in the weeds to understand, then you might have a chance. If you've buried the point, like, your point should be right off the bat, this is what we do, right? It's very clear what your companies do. I hope it's very clear what Shore does, and we need to get even better at it. But like, what we do, we are services for startups. We are back office services, HR, finance, compliance, and equity. We run all of that for you. End of story. That's what we do. Which then leads to the last point that you made that I think is important. I would love to dig in more, is kind of urgency and momentum. But even more so, the point about like handing things off. Right. So to the example I gave you about the one of my portfolio companies, he doesn't want to hand off some of the other duties and get his other founders involved because because there's parts of the company that need to keep running. So he doesn't want to hand that stuff off, and he needs his co-founders. But he doesn't have enough people to help with that. So how do founders get good? How have you gotten good in your experience at delegating, handing things off, knowing what to hand off when, and how to do that? Because a lot of founders are control freaks. But yet the only way you can build a good company is literally almost by the definition of company. Like, company is about more than one person. You can't have a company with one. Well, I guess you probably could have a company with one person, but like almost the word by definition is with other people. How do you get good at that? Because founders kind of suck, and you need to get good at it if you're going to go raise a round of funding and focus on that for a month while your company's still running and it doesn't fall apart.
It's hard. It's so hard. It's one of the hardest parts about growing a business, right? Is exactly that. You're pretty good, that you're passionate. You're more passionate about this business than anyone else because it's your baby, right? So how do you hand off important, critical duties to someone else who isn't going to necessarily share that same level of commitment and passion, but you still have to do this, right? I struggle with this all the time. I'm still have my hands in too many pies.
You need to be using chore. We're waiting on that. You're gonna start using chore at some point soon, so that's out of your hair. But we'll get you there.
Need to be using chore, but it's been a long process for me of being able to carve off duties, whether it's creating social media posts, whether it's product direction. I mean, everything, right? And finding someone to trust, and then but and again, I don't know if this is good advice because you said, how do you get good at this? I don't know if I'm good at this yet. My approach is simply finding people who have that entrepreneurial spirit, who have a hustle chromosome, right? That's sort of like how I filter when I'm hiring and talking to people. Who are the folks that go one step beyond what you expect, who show the initiative, and then giving them duties, maybe even starting with a smaller set of duties or deliverables, having a weekly stand-up to kind of keep track and monitor them, and then expanding that over time, right? Like, and just trusting more and more that they will get it done with a few errors here and there. It's inevitable, but that's where, like, I love the give you responsibilities, have that weekly stand-up to review what you accomplished, blockers, opportunities, all that jazz, and then just let you fly. Right.
What are the questions you ask in interviews to find people who have that hustle, drive, focus, and I try to identify that? And what's your hit rate on success on those hires?
Yeah, we're such a weird animal. We're not like traditional Silicon Valley startup. A lot of it is I'll just kind of ask, like, what have you done outside? Like, obviously, go through your career journey. What'd you do here? What'd you like about working there? But like, kind of like getting outside that. What else have you done? What have you had any side hustles? Have you been super accomplished in sports or music or other things like that? Just to kind of understand if they have that self initiative, which I think is so key. And then part of it isn't something to question. A lot of it's not even a question to be asked, but more like, okay, we just had an interview. Did they email me like 2 hours later thanking me for the interview? Did they follow up 2 days later, kind of nudging, or like, did they sort of show initiative? Maybe they even did something outside, like they sent me a cool event link, or had some mutual connection, put in a good word, put on a call, right? I can tell they're hustling on the side because they want this job. So again, I don't think it's so much of the question. It's just like, what's the actions, behavior that I'm seeing around this? Who hustles more? Who wants it more? Who's showing more initiative without me prompting it?
Yeah, no, like I agree. I actually was getting a little annoyed at my team earlier today because actually stuff with you guys. I don't know if we followed up post our call a few weeks ago on stuff we said we were going to do. I know I followed up to set this up. And so I sent it out to my team saying, like, hey, like, what's the status of this stuff? Is this tracked properly? We should be, if we care about building a strong partnership, we should be following up proactively on a regular basis until it gets done, or you tell us to shut up. And by the way, same thing goes with sales. Same thing goes with fundraising. Like, there should be a level of hustle and follow-up. And if we don't have that, then that is a failure point for us as a business. And the people we hire should have that mentality. And, like, you got to have some empathy. Maybe things are happening. You got to understand what's happening with your team. But nevertheless, like, that is a key point of just like that hustle in urgency in everyone.
It applies so much to fundraising, right? You've just pitched an investor. I always tell funders, like, think of fundraising as both sales. You're in there pitching and trying to get them to make a yes or no decision on whether to invest, but it's also marketing, right? Can you do anything? Can you send a monthly investor update showing your progress to those investors? Did you do that? Did you not do that? Can you get a little press? Can they see your name on TechCrunch or whatever, where like, oh yeah, I met with him last week. He was a cool guy. And like, oh, look at this. Cool. Right. Can you have other mutual contacts, people they respect, back channel and put in a good word from you, right? All that is kind of creating marketing around what you're selling, which is your pitch to investors. Yeah.
It's a really good point on the kind of the follow up. I went to a dinner, sort of a small dinner last night with a bunch of very cool people. I was flattered to be invited. And when I got home, it was like 10 something, or when I got home, I made it a point to follow with every single person who I met last night. When I got home, sent them a note on LinkedIn, or some of them WhatsApp connected with me, sent them all a note, followed up, connected. I was really annoyed though, because probably one of the more impressive guys, he's an author, he's a co-author with one of the most famous people in the world, on a pretty impressive book, top tier sort of entrepreneurial book. He has no need to follow up with me quickly. Like I can't imagine there's sort of a need in his life to do that. He's had a very successful career. He had already followed up with me before I had a chance to follow up with him. And I was...
How funny. He beat you to the punch.
Beat me to the punch. I was annoyed at myself, but even more impressed by him, that he beat me to the punch as an unnecessary thing for him to do. He beat me to the punch, and he is still hustling, even though he doesn't need to do that in any way. And he was the only one who did it, by the way. Like, no one else who had followed up with me at all. I probably was the first one who followed up with them, and no one else had. But that's the sort of drive that I think you still need to have. And many people would say, I had a successful career, and why am I spending time doing that? And it's like, because I'm still building. Like, I'm still driving and building every day. And so you need to get out there and do it. And I don't know what said to me or you or other successful entrepreneurs out there, but maybe it is that hustle. But speaking of like other characteristics that you've seen with successful entrepreneurs, what you've seen at Founder Suite and Funding Stack, like what characteristics enable, like for at least from the data, right? You're not interviewing every person who's on that platform, so you don't know if they have that drive. Are there certain data points or characteristics they have, or team makeups, or what, like key things where, like, if you just looked at the data without ever meeting the team, like, yeah, this team has a really good chance and this one doesn't. Are there elements like that you notice?
Gosh, it's hard to answer that without almost going back to the hustle, but I'll give some answers on that. Like, we have thousands and thousands of customers, all of them startups, and I don't know most of them, right? I don't get to know or talk to them, but there's always a percent of them I do get to know. And it's almost like, how did these guys sort of kind of get into my orbit? How do they find their way into my universe? I'll give you an example. I had beers last week with a Founder Suite customer named Slavik, originally from Poland. He just recently moved over to Silicon Valley, and the guy has just got that it factor, right? Like, he's hustling. He's like, what event should I go to? He's asking me questions like that. I sent him a few, and he's like, that was a great event. Like, he's doing it, you're right. But he's also doing all kinds of crazy algorithms to score investors. He's using like 5 different, he showed me his whole setup. He's using our platform. He's also using a bunch of things to like score investors. So he's really focused on the right ones. And he's showing me this stuff, and we're probably going to, adopt some of this stuff. He's just like, here's where I'm getting at. There's a phrase I learned recently, which I love. It's like, give, ask. He just was giving me stuff, giving me ideas, giving me feedback on product, giving me ways to like do AI, improve our AI adoption, stuff like that. And he hasn't even done the ask part yet, but I'm sure at some point he'll say, hey, Nathan, can you introduce me to XYZ investor, because you're connected to him? And of course I'll be happy to, because he's like he's not only paying me money, but he's also like giving me, feedback and ideas and all kinds of stuff. And I've seen that with other startups where like they're just like give, and then eventually there's an ask, and that's okay. It's a very non-transactional thing. And of course I'm honored and flattered and happy to help those, right? And then of course there's the others that are ask, and maybe a give, who are like, I don't even know you. I've never even met. And you're asking me for intros to these 25 people. I haven't had beers with you. I haven't even had, coffee or anything. I haven't even necessarily physically met you. And you're asking to put out social capital and make intros and stuff like that. So that sort of give, ask versus ask, give is another attribute, right? So it all correlates to hustle there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's still hustle, but is a way to define that essentially is it generosity, or is it playing like 2D, 3D chess sort of thing where it's like, is he doing that out of the goodness of his heart? It sounds like what you described, maybe he just sort of is, but yes, maybe somewhere deeper he knows he might be able to ask you for other things later. Or do you think it was all just, I know I'm going to offer Nathan this right now and I can come back to him later on? Like and I don't know, what is the game there?
I don't think it's sort of that premeditated, hey, if I give Nathan, he actually even said, this is twisting things even a little bit more, but he even said, hey, I wanted to sign up for Fundraising because I got so much value from your podcast, right? He learned a whole bunch about raising capital from our podcast. He's like, I just wanted to like pay back for the knowledge I got. And he just kept giving, right? And I don't, and I think that's pretty common with people. It's not like, okay, I need to earn 2 credits with Nathan by giving, and then I can ask, it's just like, I think it is kind of just a generosity. Like, I have ideas, I want to share this sort of energy and wealth freely, knowing that it will come back in ways that are not necessarily one-to-one transaction. Does that make sense?
Have you seen that with other people? Like when you think through the most successful founders who've gone through your platform, or founders that you've known, or entrepreneurs that you've known, do they play that sort of generosity game, or the 3D chess game, or what are they playing at that makes them a little bit more successful?
Yeah, I don't, when we say 2 or 3D chess, that almost sounds like they're thinking they're like manipulating, that has a little bit of negative connotation to it. I feel like they're just like, hey, I love what I do. I'm going to share my energy with others, knowing it'll come back. I don't feel it's that sort of manipulative.
Is that what leads to an excellent entrepreneur? Like, and by that, I mean like building a company that is a big success, right?
Yeah.
I can make an argument on both sides where you can be the sort of founder who's playing absolute just 3D chess. I give you this, I expect this back. And maybe they do it generously up front, knowing they're going to make this ask later. And maybe they're the really smart ones. And they're not generous at all. And they are keeping everything tight, close to the chest. They're not going to share a lot with people. They don't want to share a lot with people. They don't want you to know what they're building, why they're building it, how they're building it, where they're going. Are those the people that are more successful, or is it being more generous and giving back to the ecosystem? That might be karma-wise better to do, right? You may say for your own karma to do that. Like, I could also argue, okay, your podcast is really generous to give out all those tips and tricks. It's also good marketing for you.
Sure.
But you could also put some of that behind a paywall and say, hey, like, you want to go in the real depth here. Here's like, you got to pay a little bit more to do it. What is a truly great entrepreneur going to do on those 2 fronts?
You think about folks, and I don't know these people personally, Larry Ellison, Travis Kalanick, there are some of these entrepreneurs from decades past or that are just so driven. They don't seem like really nice guys. Again, I don't know them. They might be super nice. They seem like turbo AAA personality types who make it happen, right? And then there are others
who will it into existence.
That's a great way to put it. Those guys, I doubt they're sort of, again, I don't know them, but don't get the sense that they're sort of leading with generosity and then hoping. But then I've interacted with, and maybe it's a bias thing or a self-selection bias or something, but I know others that are just, it takes a village to raise a startup, and I'm going to kind of create my village, and I'm going to have fans and champions who will help me along the way by paying it forward and just being generous with time, energy, and contacts and intros and feedback and guidance, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who have been very successful in that approach. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but
yeah, I mean, sort of, you're kind of giving both answers, right? I would say push back maybe a little bit and say a little bit, at least I'll tell you my opinion, which is, and to be clear, I'm not sure where I stand on it. I actually do know where I stand on this a little bit, but like, I think the founders who are most hardcore isn't even quite the right term. They're like almost don't care, like don't like, almost like they are going to do everything they can to make their startup a success.
Yeah.
And everything else doesn't matter. Like, they will say no to all other things. They will say no to other distractions. They will say no to helping anyone else because it does not directly impact them in their business today. Like, they're so obsessed and so focused that it seems from the outside that they are a-holes and they are not good people and they are not doing those things. I believe those are probably the ones who in many cases make the most successful businesses. I don't know if I worry about this myself. Like part of this podcast exists because it's a journey for me to learn how to become better at this craft. And I've been doing it at 4 startups now and invested in 200, as you know. But I'm not sure. I don't know. Do I have that killer instinct, or am I too willing to say yes to people and to meet up for a coffee and chat and help the ecosystem out? And not enough saying no, 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 no all the time to just be laser focused on what I need to do to make sure I win and crush my competition. I don't know if I have that killer instinct, and that's something that bothers me. Because I want to be an excellent entrepreneur. At the same time, I don't want to be someone who people like, he destroyed his personal life and has no friends and has created all this bad karma in the world in this singular pursuit of success. I'm not sure that's healthy either. So where does that come out? Like, where do you come out on that front once again when you've seen these companies? And then how does that come across? How do people have that come across in a fundraise?
People, investors are human. You've got to work with VCs you've got to work with your investors and vice versa. They've got to work with you. Yes, they want that driven, bust through walls attitude. VCs are often pretty wealthy already. Do they want to work with a bunch of a-holes, right? Like, I err on the side of the more friendly, like I want people to like me. I guess maybe that's my internal bias, right? I want people to like me because I like people.
I do wonder, I don't know if Travis or Elon or Jeff Bezos, I don't know if they care if anybody likes them. Maybe they do now. Like actually Elon definitely doesn't care right now. Like Jeff Bezos might care now that he's sort of out of Amazon. He might care a little bit more. But I don't know. I'm feeling they don't care. Like they're playing a different game and they don't care.
That's true. But those are not just the 1%, but the 0.00001% of successful founders, right? Like we're looking at 3 or 4 of the most aggressive, maybe ruthless, founders, entrepreneurs in all time. I'm trying to think of others that are a little bit more sort of benevolent. Like I don't know him, Mark Benioff, maybe of Salesforce. Like he's always involved.
I'm not sure if he was in the beginning, but he seems the way nowadays.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to think about this. Like, let's find some examples.
So you think they don't come? I mean, this is also an interesting point.
Yeah.
I wonder a lot. Do people not come to mind because they don't exist or because they just don't make good stories? Like having a story about the crazy culture at Amazon or at Tesla, or even Apple when Steve Jobs is there.
Yeah.
Those make for good stories because they are so beyond what the norm is. So they get written about and so we know about them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are standard. Almost they're written about because they are non-standard. So I don't know. Like that's what I'm always curious about is like, is it what gets written about, or is it actually those are the people who truly are the most successful?
Good question. I don't know. People love a story. People love a villain, right? If you can kind of villainize.
But also like, is that something you look for too? So speaking about investing, like I love it when a founder comes to me like, they're like, I built these 3 companies when I was in college and I did all these things and I just didn't like, it didn't matter to them. Like in some ways, like, do I want to be their best friend? Probably not. But as an investor, that's someone I'm like, oh, I want to back you because you don't care. Like you're singularly focused on this goal.
I probably have a bias. I mean, I'm definitely on the side of like, hey, nice guys and gals win over time. But you can obviously point to all those names you mentioned. I probably am a little bit biased because we're serving entrepreneurs, we're serving founders. They're a struggling class, if you want to call it that, and a lot of them help us out too. So, like I've received great benefits from our customers and users because we've been nice to them, and they'll come back later and make an introduction to the accelerator they're in. If I was super ruthless, I don't think that those things would happen. So for me, it's working to be the nice guy. But it's a great point, right? All the names we mentioned, some of the largest, most successful businesses ever created, often very ruthless founders. So I don't know.
Yeah. And so like on that note, I mean, are there cultures that you find the best founders create, or that you've seen across founders and you've been in this space for a long time, that like what sort of culture do the best founders create? Is it a hustle culture? Is it a crazy hour culture? Is it all in it together? Is it, hey, like we trust our team? Like what sort of culture are people creating for success?
I think hustle culture, we've kind of talked about that. If you're hiring people with initiative and hustle, that's going to create a hustle culture. That's what I like to think. I think I'll use my company as an example, but it's a hustle culture. It's a trust culture. I can't micromanage everyone, so I have to trust them to get stuff done. And it's a very collegial culture, right? Like we get on our Zoom calls for weekly stand-ups, and the first 5-10 minutes are often joking about what's going on, or someone has a new haircut or whatever it is, right? It's like a fun place. And sure, we'd probably be more efficient if we trimmed out those first 5-10 minutes that are, just small chat and joking around. But also we have almost no churn or very little churn in terms of people leaving, right? I think people enjoy working here, right? And so that's
how big is the team right now?
Yeah, we're still pretty small. So there's also that factor. We're like 29, 30 people.
Okay.
That's obviously much harder to do when you're in the hundreds.
Are you setting clear goals and timelines? Like, yeah, you want to have a collegial fun culture. You don't want turnover. Turnover is a killer for a lot of companies. At the same time, I think for some of the best startups, you almost want turnover if you have a truly hustle, like we are moving fast culture, and you just want to push out the people who can't keep up. So turnover can be okay.
Yeah.
If it's churning out the right people, because the people who really are hustling, they might argue, I don't want to work with the people who are slow. Like these guys, this random person on the team is slowing me down. I don't want them here. And like you will know, and you want them churned out. So it can be a healthy turnover if you've created the right culture and right reasons for that turnover.
Totally. I think that's important. And we did our first ever little reduction in force, I don't know, last August or something. Market's, tough for fundraising, which impacts our business. And I'm like, this is going to be really hard. I don't want to let people go. But, it turned out, Adam, that was like super healthy to purge a handful of lower performers. And it just made everyone else more efficient. So sure, whether you systemize that, I mean, you hear some businesses, even like the investment banking and consulting businesses, are every year kind of trimming X% of the total workforce, regardless of market conditions, because they're just weeding out lower performers. I think that can be healthy, but
well, it's a forcing function, right? There's a benefit to having a forcing function and saying like, hey, look, you just know up front, you will not be here over the long term if you don't hit this certain bar. End of story. There's no ifs, and or buts. Like you're just not going to be here. It's probably healthy. In a lot of ways, it's tough for people to do because it's hard to let people go. So on the note, what do you guys do at your companies? What do you do to track success, status, where someone is, all that sort of stuff? What do you do to track metrics about whether someone is getting their job done? Like how do you put in performance metrics, outcomes? What are you doing to track and build hopefully a good and hopefully someday great company yourself?
We're still very simple. It's weekly stand-ups with, like, for example, we have a Thursday sales team stand-up, small sales team, but everyone reports number of meetings, number of trials, number of successful sales by product line, and opportunities or blockers, right? And that's all it is. And so I keep a log, we track all this stuff so I can see, is anyone flatlining? Is anyone declining?
Yep.
Simple as that. That's all it is for us. Very simple.
I wonder, but how, and you're just tracking that in a note, like in your head though, to some extent. Okay, this person said they deliver X by this date. Did they actually do it? Or I'm trying to think more of like almost for us, we do something similar, but I want to be able to track with data. Like I almost want to have a graph of projects stated, date due, did deliver, and sort of see over time, did someone accomplish those goals?
Yeah, for us, it's very, I mean, again, we're still pretty small, but like salespeople have those sales goals. Social media folks have, how many visits, how many reshare, like all the metrics around the social media activity. So everyone has their own different things.
How things have changed as an entrepreneur over the past, especially for fundraising over the past sort of 5 to 10 years, to where they are today and where they're going in the future. What changes do you imagine what's occurred in the ecosystem in general. Let's start with like what's happened over the past years and how has it changed, and then maybe where we're going in the next 5 years if you had to predict.
Yeah, interesting. So I'd say what's changed most. I'll stick with fundraising for the sake of brevity, but like it's obviously become far more easy to build startups. The number of VCs has exploded, right? Number of angels has exploded. What's sort of interesting is that when I used to do this as a consultant or fractional CFO, so much of fundraising was very localized, right? You would go drive down, I'd get in the car every day and drive down to Sand Hill Road and we'd pitch a bunch of VCs and drive back. And that was kind of the every day we did that.
Done that myself.
Yeah, it was kind of nice to have everyone clustered on one, geographic area. But that's changed, right? Like that started to change with international startups popping up out of everywhere, like even Skype, right? I think Skype was over 20 years ago. It was like, look at these guys. Several $1 billion exit to Microsoft and Spotify, right? You started to see startups kind of emerging all over the place that weren't necessarily just clones of US versions. And that opened up investors' eyes. I think also obviously COVID and where everyone moved to their cabin or whatever, and people are just pitching regardless of location. So locations changed. And I think that's generally pretty good for founders because
Sorry, has it changed so completely? So you want to have the data on this more than I do, but I've heard that the large majority of startups are still fundraising essentially in the San Francisco Bay Area. Obviously, there are other markets where they are also able to raise, but if you're a serious founder trying to raise serious money, at least in the United States, and you're a US-based company or want to be, you're coming to the Bay Area and you're going to be here for a period of time. Actually, the founder I've been mentioning this whole time, the one who gave me that list of stuff and we went through his list of investors.
Yep.
He had moved here a week ago. He's like, I moved here because this is where I need to go build my company for the next big phase. They're actually a London-based company and have been with their main customers over there. Like, we're moving the whole team to San Francisco. They're sort of an AI company. The investors are here and they're like, we have made this move as our next big step because we need to level ourselves up. So I see that anecdotally, and I live in San Francisco, so I'm a bit of a booster of it. But is that what you're seeing in the data too? So you're saying like geography doesn't matter, but maybe, but I'm sort of pushing back on that a bit.
Yeah. No, I love it. Great pushback because I think you can get the attention of Silicon Valley investors. Okay, so investors are distributed all over the place, but yes, there's a huge concentration in Silicon Valley and California in general. You can get the investors' attention based almost anywhere. I do webinars at different accelerators all over the place in Tampa and a couple of places in Canada, like in Fort Collins, Colorado. Like I, kind of talk to founders based all over the place, and they're getting the interest of, I always tell them like it's better to optimize for industry fit and stage, less so much on location. Having said all that, after that first meeting or two, especially if you have a Silicon Valley investor, you got to start doing the face-to-face. So that's when it comes time to come out here. Now, your example, they move the whole team, but I see a lot of founders get Airbnb or stay in one of these hacker houses. They have a WeWork subscription, and they'll spend, like Slavik, who I had beers with, like the Polish guy. He's, hustling Silicon Valley. I don't think he's here permanently. I don't think he's moving the whole team. That'd be a good question. But, a lot of founders will come over and make the month or two, couple months, making the rounds, maybe go back, work with their engineering team who's back in Poland or whatever, come back, do another, round of month or two of hustle and obviously set up a Delaware C Corp and stuff like that. So, but that's been cool, right? I think investors are much more open to that too, because if you've got a killer development team in Poland or wherever, and you've got a Delaware C Corp and maybe, a few of the folks are based in Silicon Valley, that's a great team,
Totally. I think it's a great combination. I think the companies that are, we could go into a whole rant that I have about remote versus in person to some extent, but like, I think the overall benefits of that are really clear. What you just described, for that example of a dev team overseas and one or two people in the US, things like that. Going back to the point though, without maybe setting you up to state the obvious, but like, why does a founder like Slavik, why does he feel the need to even be here in person? Like, what is it about being in person that maybe sets people apart? And is that advice that you give? I mean, is that advice that you see people use or give to people on your platforms too? Like if you want to have a successful raise,
Yeah.
you tell them you need to do it in person. Like don't be lazy, get on a plane and go drive to Sand Hill Road if that's what you need to do.
What I like to do is a bit of a hybrid. First couple meetings, do it on Zoom. And the beauty of that, like if you're reaching out and connecting with 200 investors, you can pack in a lot of Zoom calls in a day, right? You can pack in 3 times more Zoom calls than you could meeting face to face. But after first, second round meetings, then shift into face to face mode. Because 2 reasons. One, as the founder, it'll help you close the round if you get out there and show up face to face, right? It's just, I'd be curious how many of your investments you've made, if any, that you never met the founder. Have you ever made an investment where you didn't meet them personally, or?
Oh, the large majority I've never met in person.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting.
The large majority of my investments I've never met. Now, the biggest investments that we've made, the ones where we have the highest conviction, those we've all met in person.
Yep.
For the smaller checks, I'm a little bit more of a high velocity investor. For those investments, have been a pitch call basically and a deck, and we can make a pretty quick decision. But we're a little bit more of a rare, different type of fund in that sense.
Yeah. Well, so, to summarize though, as the founder, it'll help your conversion rate if you get out there on a plane and meet folks face to face. Also, selfishly speaking, for the founder, this, everyone knows this, but you can't really divorce your investors. Once you have investors on, I've only known like 1 or 2 startups that have ever like bought out and got rid of their investors. So you're committed to them. So I would be really cautious about taking someone's money if I didn't sit down, look them in the eye, get a vibe from them, just that face to face. Maybe I'm just old school, but like if we're going to be partnered up for the next several years, I want to get that gut feeling, and I need to do that face to face. So
fair.
Yeah.
How many rounds of meetings does it usually take that you've seen for people to get VC investment? Is it, one initial meeting with like a junior, like an analyst at a VC firm, one Zoom call with like the partner, and then the third meeting, if you make it to that third round, is with the whole partnership? Is it three meetings, or is it, I'm doing a few coffees to build a relationship over 12 months, and then finally it's time to raise, and so it's actually more like 10 meetings? Like, what's the average number of meetings to achieve a successful?
Yeah, it's tricky because it depends on the size of the fund you're pitching, right? Some of these larger funds, there is that very much graduation process where you maybe meet with one partner, right, to pitch the original idea. Then you meet oftentimes with someone even more junior who is kind of running due diligence and background checking, all that stuff. Then you get in, maybe meet a smaller partner meeting, maybe there's a couple partners involved, and then you pitch the entire, partnership, right? So I've seen that where it's like 4 or 5 meetings with progressively more people in the room every time. That's often with the larger funds. Now, with smaller funds, if it's a 2 or 3 person fund, then it's usually a little bit faster, timeline, but also it might be more informal stuff. Hey, let's go get a coffee. Let's go to lunch. Let's go for a hike or a walk or a bike ride, join my Peloton or go windsurfing with me. I mean, there's like kind of that social element too that sometimes happens with smaller funds where you're getting to know each other, but it's a little bit less pitchy, formalized pitch, and that can be, call it 2 to 3 meetings.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. What percentage of the successful founders on the platform have co-founders?
I wish we tracked that data. We don't have that data. Just anecdotally talking to a lot of our users, I'd say majority do have co-founders.
Okay.
I'm a solo founder. I think there are some pluses of being a solo founder. I kind of like it, but there are times where like, I wish I had someone next to me.
What are the pluses and minuses?
Why do startups fail, right? They don't find product market fit. They run out of money, blah, blah. A lot of times though, it's like co-founder disputes, or at least even if the company doesn't fail, it's because there's bad blood between founders, right? You've seen this. I'd be curious how many you've seen in your 200 investments, but having multiple people as co-founders can increase the odds of failure just because of interpersonal disputes.
Absolutely.
So the people we've mentioned, Larry Ellison, right? I mean, Elon, I don't know what you characterize him as, Steve Jobs, he had Wozniak and stuff, but a lot of very successful founders. I think did Travis have a co-founder? I can't remember.
No, he has some senior people who kind of helped out, but he was the clear founder, if you want.
Yeah, right.
He did it for the idea he initially did, but he was the main lead 100%.
Yeah. Well, there's
also a multi-time founder at that point, right? He was also someone who had founded a few other companies previously.
Yeah.
I do think there's a difference between how many times you founded a company. I mean, I'll use myself as an example. So with Chore, I'm the sole founder. I'm and CEO. With my other 3 companies before that, I had co-founders for every single one. So it took me to my 4th company to do it on my own. And yeah, there's still days I wish I had other people involved, but also there's probably some benefits. I think at this point, I've had enough experience and confident enough in my decisions where it's great not to have the distraction or need to convince someone else that like, this is the right way to go. I want to convince my team. I want them to be bought in, but a co-founder has a special level of status that even your senior executives don't have.
Agreed. You can go faster as a co-founder, or a solo founder, right? You can just move a little.
You might have blind spots too. The co-founder can fill in blind spots you might otherwise have or not be able to do. And if you're paired properly, they will share a similar level of drive and sort of superpower that only founders can have, right? I can close more sales. I can make certain decisions that only someone as a founder can really do. Yeah. No one else will have that, even if they have some senior level title.
Totally. Yep.
So you need to be paired with someone. So anyways, kind of rounding things out, right? Like thinking about just your life overall as a founder, multiple companies, seeing, 100,000 plus startups trying to raise. How do you think about like work-life balance, work-life unity? What does that look like if you're an obsessed founder? Can you even have quote unquote work-life balance?
No. I mean, I'll just answer that directly. Listen, I have work-life balance now, but we're several years in and we're still fairly small. I'm able to go play 2 hours of pickleball 4 or 5 days a week because I have a good team and I have, a lot of systems in place that are semi-autonomous and running and, so I can do that. But freaking the early days, God, I mean, I'm not that old. I'm 53, but I look like I'm 70. I attribute it to.
Don't sell yourself short.
Well, I blame it on the first 3 or 4 years of launching Founder Suite, which it was tough. I mean, you've been through that, I'm sure, where it's just like, oh my God, this is gonna fail. I'm failing. Like, just the internal turmoil, every setback, every hiccup, every time the site crashed or whatever, or someone cancels or churns, or just worked my ass off, and it was really painful. I don't know if I'd do another startup. I'll be honest. Like maybe I'd invest in startups or coach or do something else, but I don't know if I would repeat this again. I don't know.
I hear you on that. I don't even know if I can speculate in a sense for myself. We're still in my mind early. In some ways, I've been on this journey for a long time. We're a spin out of my previous companies. So that was started in 2020. So we're 6 years in, or 5 years in. What are we in 2025? Sorry, 5 years in some ways. But at the same time, like, yeah, startups are really hard. And I do think you can have some level of balance but not completely. Like my life is essentially Chore, my startup, and my family, and I have young kids, and that is my life.
Yep.
I'm okay with that trade-off right now because I'm interested in what I'm doing, and I believe that everyone deserves to have a chore doing their admin back office work for them. Like I just think a company that doesn't, right? Like I'm angry on behalf of you, even if you don't get it yet, and I mean my story has failed you. I'm angry that you don't have someone doing this for you who is world-class and expert and low cost. Then we failed on our mission to achieve that or make it clear to you that this is a value. And so like for me, that drives me every day to make this clear.
Totally. That's a great value proposition. You're enabling some semblance of work-life balance with Chore, right?
That is yes, or gives you more time as a founder who wants to be obsessed and build a venture backable company. It gives you time to go do that. Like when founders are like, oh, but I gotta like run payroll. I'm like, no, you need to go finish your product and make it delightful.
Yeah.
You need to go get customers for that, and then you need to go convince VCs that give you money to help scale that and pour fuel on the fire.
I would say, I mean, like different, obviously, but I would say our mission is similar too. Like fundraising is really painful. It's hard. It's time consuming. You want to be working on your business. We're trying to make that easier for founders, faster, less time consuming, all the same stuff, right? So you can really focus on what's important. I think we have probably similar attitudes about that, right?
Yeah, you pay a little bit of money to your platforms to make your fundraising process easier and better and faster. Like you've already all the databases. I don't need to go scrape everything online to get the database of all the VCs and what categories they invest in. Yeah, that already exists. So yeah, I don't need to be like penny wise and pound foolish, pay you a little bit of money, get the interest quickly and move on. And that's the same for every founder, but you have to be willing to spend money to like your startup's an investment. You have to be willing to make that investment and spend a little bit of money on that investment for a clear return.
Yeah, for sure.
So on the note, a few more last things. One, we didn't finish talking about like, what is the future of fundraising? So we're in 2025. What is happening in the next 1 to 5 years when it comes to fundraising and building a business? I will add just quickly to add to this question. I think more companies will get started. More founders will start companies. More people will become entrepreneurs. But what does that mean from a fundraising perspective, that what you're seeing in the data?
It's, the easy answer is AI is going to find its way into fundraising, already starting to do that.
Wait, like what way does it find a way in? Is it that every company, it's not sexy to even say you're an AI company anymore because everyone's an AI company the same way you wouldn't say today, I'm an internet company. Like people would laugh at you. But in 1997, you said you were an internet company and that was like sexy and got you a big valuation.
Yeah.
I assume in 5 years, you're not going to be like, well, I'm an AI company, so give me lots of money. People would laugh at you.
No, not at all. I don't mean AI in terms of the company, but I think applications of AI as applied to fundraising, we're going to see a lot of really cool stuff. So, just to give a little historical perspective, when I was raising capital in the 2000s, for example, it was actually kind of hard to find. People would hire me to build them a list of investors, and we spent a lot of time researching investors. I remember way back when in the 90s, late 90s, we'd go down to the library at the firm and get a Pratt's CD or DVD or whatever CD of investors, right? It was like a directory of venture, but you had to have a subscription. It's become easier and easier to identify the right investors. And today we have a database, but go on LinkedIn, there's like lists all over the place. It's easy and easy, right? Getting the intro has always been hard, right? We just released a get intro feature that maps your social graph and kind of shows you, oh, look, you want to get to Adam, here's all the mutual connection paths to get there, right? We've made that part easier. You can keep going all the way down the line. We're working on email sequences and stuff like that to do more automated follow-up, and for good and bad, right? If you're on the receiving end, maybe that's bad, but picture a day, and this is sort of, to answer the question, picture a day where an AI agent or bot is literally where you're entering some information about your business, your traction, what you're doing, who you are, all that stuff. And it's going out and building a list, composing the warm intro contacts, queuing those up, composing like follow-up emails. It's probably giving feedback on your deck, helping refine the deck, helping build the deck, like you mentioned too. And it's doing a lot of the work for you. So fundraising is never just going to be a coin operated, thing, but it could be close to that, I think, right? Where it's finding the right investors, qualifying them, and doing a lot of that outreach. And we're already starting to do that. And we've got a ChatGPT integration helping draft the emails and things like that. Like it's already happening, but like just picture a day where AI is almost acting like an investment banker would if you're a later stage company.
But also, I mean, I know on all these VC firms are going to be using that. I'm kind of working with another VC firm, and I'm like, what are we using for AI to like run through decks and understand it and like
totally
judge the decks before we even talk to somebody? So it's going to be my AI as a founder versus your AI as a VC. in what gets through.
That's true. You're 100% right. Like, VCs are using AI to filter all the decks, so it's a bit of an arms race. And there's still going to be that human component where, if you can meet a VC at an event and form a bit of a trust and bond, I think that will let you rise above the AI bots talking to each other.
So
Probably, maybe, who knows?
maybe. I mean, I'm not totally sure. Question for you. So what if you give yourself advice when you were first starting your companies and you were first becoming an entrepreneur, what advice would you give yourself?
Two. I'm going to take the liberty of doing two. One is hire a product manager earlier. This is something I say all the time because I'm a finance guy. I'm a, fundraising guy. I'm not a product guy. Like, get out of my own way. And that's for me. I'm not a product guy, so I needed to hire a product person earlier because I wanted to build all these crazy bells and whistles. There's a great Simpsons episode where Homer is like given I forget who granted it, but he's like, Homer, design the car of your dreams. And he came out with this car that had all kinds of crazy ass bells and whistles on it. Cost $300,000 because it had all this stuff on it. That's sort of how I operate with product. Like, get me out of the product. So that's one. The other is, and this is way easier said than done, but like, just sort of trust that it's going to work out. There were so many stressful nights, sleepless nights, worrying about, is this startup failing? Is this thing imploding? Just get up every day, pull your boots on, hustle, work, and kind of just have faith it's going to work out, right? And it's kind of like, don't focus so much on the outcome. Just enjoy the process, the journey. You're very lucky if you're a founder. Think of the billions of people in the world. How few of them have the luxury of getting up every day and building something they want to see in the world. You're very lucky, right? So enjoy the process. Trust it's going to work out, and don't worry so much.
I feel that every day. Actually, gratitude in general is really important, I think, in life. Yep. But I feel that way. Certainly, I for myself in the work I do, I was explaining to my team like how I feel just lucky and privileged to be able to say, like, I can wake up every day and decide what I'm going to do. Like, yes, I'm the CEO, I'm the boss. I can choose what choice I want to make. I can choose not to do this anymore. I can make any choice I want, and therefore I'm content with sort of the life I've chosen because it has been my choice. And yes, it stresses me out. And I woke up early this morning stressed about, like, actually I had a podcast related dream, not with you in it, with someone else in it, but like a podcast related dream. And like, but I'm also energized by that. Like, how do I keep building great things in making this better and better? And yeah, it is a privilege. And you have to have gratitude for that and be able to be on this journey. And sure, it's stressful and there's no guarantees. But at least I have the opportunity to try to change the world. And most people don't even attempt that. And for them, I'm sorry that they don't even attempt it. And for all the people who are attempting it and the people listening to this who want to be entrepreneurs, like, thank you for trying. Like, no matter what, I gave it a shot, and credit to you. I almost want to end it right on that because that sounds like a very strong ending. But I do one question that I ask everybody at the end to kind of keep things a good story arc. If there was a single piece of advice, so that's the way you give yourself back in the day when you were first starting. But if there's a single piece of advice you would give yourself or just give to founders today to be a great, excellent entrepreneur based on your definition, what would it be?
Kind of a wimp out, but it would be a lot of everything we just discussed. Get up every day, be grateful for what you're doing, that you get the chance. Help others along the way, because that's going to come back often in spades. I do believe that. Like, because see it in my own business, right? Like, I see so many people helping us that maybe they have some ulterior motive, but I don't think they do. I think they're just, also kind of have a pay it forward mentality, and just hustle and have fun along the way, right? We get one shot going around this life, right? Just be,
in a sense, YOLO. You only live once, and you should choose carefully where you want to spend that time.
100%. And being a founder, I think, is a great use of your time, because, like we just discussed, you're changing the world. You're hopefully making the world better in some way. I see a lot of the founders on our platform that are doing really cool stuff in solving, like, environmental climate crisis stuff, plastic reduction, different packaging, like, so much cool stuff. Like, I wish I had a giant fund to invest in all these companies because I love what you're doing, right? And like, it makes the world better, that people care about, that you can make lots of money for.
So it is a privilege being here with you and you spending some time with me right now, Nathan. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. How can folks get in touch? How can they find you if they want to learn more, if they want help fundraising? Where can they find you?
You bet. Easy. Foundersuite.com if you're a startup, fundingstack.com if you're a VC or advisor. The other two little things I'll plug is our podcast. We do have our own podcast. Hopefully I'll get you on there soon, called How I Raised It. Just search How I Raised It on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, all that good stuff, or YouTube. And lots of good stuff. I thought I knew everything about fundraising. I'd done 300 interviews and I've learned, like, I only knew 1%, right? Now I've
totally
expanded. So check that out. Lots of really inspirational stuff. And then also LinkedIn. So mention you're on the Chore podcast, Adam's podcast. Happy to connect. But we publish a lot of stuff. It's Nathan Beckord, Beckord. Look me up and connect on LinkedIn. But we publish a lot of really good stuff on LinkedIn once or twice a week, like just solid fundraising related stuff. Lists of New York family offices just got 270,000 views, or our data room structure at 150,000, like stuff that kind of goes viral. So some pretty solid stuff. So those are my plugs.
Excellent. Nathan, thank you so much for the time. As I said, it is precious for all of us. You can never get this time back. So thank you for spending some of it with me. I appreciate it. And great having you on the show.
Thanks so much, Adam. Appreciate it.